الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وكذلك ما أرسلنا من قبلك في قرية من نذير إلا قال مترفوها إنا وجدنا آباءنا على أمة وإنا على آثارهم مقتدون. قال أولو جئتكم بأهدى مما وجدتم عليه آباءكم قالوا إنا بما أرسلتم به كافرون. فانتقمنا منهم فانظر كيف كان عاقبة المكذبين. وإذ قال إبراهيم لأبيه وقومه إنني براء مما تعبدون إلا الذي فطرني فإنه سيهدين. وجعلها كلمة باقية في عقبه لعلهم يرجعون. بل متعت هؤلاء وآباءهم حتى جاءهم الحق ورسول مبين. ولما جاءهم الحق قالوا هذا سحر وإنا به كافرون. وقالوا لولا نزل هذا القرآن على رجل من القريتين عظيم. أهم يقسمون رحمة ربك نحن قسمنا بينهم معيشتهم في الحياة الدنيا ورفعنا بعضهم فوق بعض درجات ليتخذ بعضهم بعضا سخريا. ورحمة ربك خير مما يجمعون. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. Alhamdulillah. All praises for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most gracious, the most merciful, and the infinite amount of blessings and peace be upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the tawfiq and the divine guidance once again to be present. Today we're starting from ayah 23. So before we begin ayah 23, the previous verses, just do a little review of where we ended off last time. We were speaking about dala'il al-tawheed, the evidences of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was addressing the mushrikeen and their conjectures. It was mentioned in the previous verses. People who were attributing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala children and daughters, right? And it was just the irony of the matter that Mushrikeen didn't like daughters themselves. So it was just the irony, and that irony was pointed out. Also, when asked for proof for the things that Mushrikeen said and did, they didn't have any proof. All they had was besides conjecture and following their forefather. That my forefathers said that, they must be right. You can't say my forefathers were wrong, or else you're making fun of them. So they have to be right. They're my forefathers, and they just hung to it. Today we're continuing from that today. So today the first verse, وَكَذَلِكَ, and like that, مَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن قَبْلِكَ, we have not sent before you in any nation a warner, except that the well-off people said, the affluent people said. Allah Ta'ala is saying that, O Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there was no community before you that whenever a Nabi was sent, you know how many Nabis were sent, Bani Israel previously. Whenever a Nabi was sent, except the affluent people, what did they say? Inna wajadna aba'ana ala ummah, that we found our forefathers upon this Sharia. Like whatever they were doing, the laws that they had made up for their life, they're like, oh, our dad did it, our grandfather did it. Like that was their excuse. And we are upon their paths, on their footprints, fully guided. So they're very confident in saying that we are on the path of our forefathers and we're fully guided. The wrong confidence. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pointed out well-off people. And I'm going to come to that later on in my speech, that if you look here and also in other places in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when a prophet comes, the first people to reject are the affluent, the well-off people. So that's why you must have seen it under the topics today, I'd written something about misguidance of professionals. So the professionals, people with an art, they're the first people to reject. I'm going to come to them. I'll leave them for now. I'll come back to it once we come to the other aspect of the affluent people, inshallah. So moving on to the next verse. قال, he said, أَوَلَوْ جِئْتُكُمْ, even if I bring to you something better in guidance than what your forefathers, that you found with your forefathers. They said, indeed we are with whatever you bring. The Prophet had told them that, look, you're following your forefathers, all right, their guidance. I'll bring you guidance. So let's just compare the two guidance. Right? So it's teaching us a strategy. Let's just compare the two guidance. You have guidance from your forefathers and I'm giving you guidance. Why don't you follow ahda? Ahda means just follow what's a bigger, better guide. Let's just compare our guides. But they said, Inna bima, the people said back to the Prophet ﷺ, Inna bima ursil, or no, not the Prophet ﷺ, meaning whenever a Nabi came, the affluent people said we're following our forefather. The Nabi went on to say, let's compare the two guidances. And then the people always said that, oh, Inna bima ursiltum bi kafirun. We just don't believe in it. Whatever you send, we don't believe in it. So one thing we learn here about comparing, because a human being is a logical, a reasoning creature, and so therefore our Deen advocates thinking outside the box, thinking of, and it encourages it. It doesn't shy away from it. All along it says, why don't you think? Because this is the truth. There may be some other belief systems that may hide people from thinking outside the box, but not us. We can think. Also, this response of theirs that we're just not going to listen, meaning we're not going to give ear to your message, there's no treatment for that. Like if you are trying to tell someone about deen or some da'wah to them and they tell you, oh, we're not going to listen to anything you say. And there's no reason why they don't want to listen to anything you say, but that's just their response. So there's no treatment for that. So you're not going to become guided like that, right? Because a human being, our guidance, it comes from asking, it comes from looking around, it comes from thinking. It makes sense, right? So if somebody tells you, I don't want to think, not going to ask, I'm not going to look, so we're going to say we can't help you then. If you don't want to think about it, then we can't help you. So it's a helpless situation. So that Allah was saying that previous people, and history always repeats itself, so some people put themselves in that position. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world has created means of guidance, but they just don't want to look and ask. And so how are they expecting to become guided? If you're not going to ask, look, and think, you're going to close all that from being guided. You have to be open to be guided. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Also here we can maybe bring here the point about studying deen, right? But we have to study deen. one of the things that we lack in our Muslim community today is that people are not studying deen. Understand? People who attend dars, or people who attend lectures, understand, with people who they can better themselves in deen, and they have to continue learning. You know how much people do that? Is it 5% of our? So if you don't study the deen, it's very important. That's also hinted at in this verse here. Obviously, we have to study every aspect of deen, but if you take, for example, just salah, there may be so many people you find they're not praying their salah accurately. And salah is the first thing they'll be asked on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So salah, and there's a little story you have here of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahmatullahi alayh, the fourth in fiqh, one of the fuqaha. Imam Ahmad, rahmatullahi alayh, he found people were not praying properly. He went city to city, he was just observing people's salats. He realized people weren't staying salah properly. So then he wrote a book called Kitab al-Salah. So we have a book from him, Kitab al-Salah, Salah in the world, just because he saw defects in people's prayers. So we have to create a balance. Like we have to study the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like we study everything else in life, we have to also study the deen of Allah. People are not creating that balance. Some people are studying the world, the material world, they master it. They gain masteries in it. So you ask them, that those professionals, what do you know about deen? They don't know anything. They're zero on that. So this shouldn't be the case. Then after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, فَانْتَقَمْنَا مِنْهُمْ. So we send our azab to them. So since these nations, they wanted to be, don't want to ask, don't want to study, right? They want to just be blinded. So then we فَانْتَقَمْنَا مِنْهُمْ. We send our azab to them. فَانْظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ. Look at the outcome of those who deny. Meaning, look at history. It's telling you, look at history. History constantly repeats itself. You'll always find those who don't want to listen, they don't become guided. You have the punishments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the next verse. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ. And remember when Ibrahim alayhi salam said to his father and his people. Now, why is it all of a sudden bringing Ibrahim alayhi salam? What does that have to do with the previous verses? Because the previous verses were speaking about the mushrikeen and they're latching onto their forefathers, right? They're misguided forefathers. And remember, I clarified this last week, remember? That there's two types of forefathers, the guided forefathers and the misguided. Quran's idea is don't follow the misguided, follow the guided forefathers. So it's saying, like over here too, look, it's a nice proof here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling those mushrikeen that you're following your misguided forefather. We'll give you a forefather that you even confess is your forefather, Ibrahim alayhi salam. So it's giving them an alternative that, okay, hey, you want to follow forefathers? We'll give you a forefather. Everybody agrees to Ibrahim alayhi salam. And of course, the people, when the Quran is being revealed, the Yahud, the Nasara, and the Mushrikeen of Arab, they all link themselves to Ibrahim alayhi salam. They had a connection. In fact, the Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula, they were always following the deen of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It continued even within the Arabs. Okay, of course, Yahud and Nasara had whatever was left of the Old Testament, New Testament, but even the Mushrikeen Arab, they had the teaching. It was only 400 years before the advent of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for just 400 years, that one person brought in shirk. You know, all those we hear in the seerah about the idols being there, just 400 years. And the way it happened was, they were sticking to Tawheed before. One person from the Arabs, he had gone to the other Mushrikeen lands, and he saw that they had idols, and he got impressed. He said, we believe in a creator that, and they saw little idols on sale. So he's like, that's so impressive. You can have your God right there, right next to you. So he's like, let me take this in. So he brought it and started selling it in. So it was all a one man's job, who brought all that, the shirk into the Arabs. There we get Mushrikeen Arab, the Mushriks of Arabia. So it says, look in history as to the outcome of such people who behaved in this way. Okay, so then it starts bringing Ibrahim alayhi salam. So why is it bringing Ibrahim alayhi salam? That this is your real forefather. Just to mention something about Ibrahim alayhi salam, just to remind yourself, the real story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, small mention of Ibrahim alayhi salam is here, but the real story of Ibrahim alayhi salam is in Surah Safat, the one we always refresh on Eid al-Adha. But I'll just tell you a few things. Ibrahim alayhi salam, the big city of that time, the flourishing city around him was Babylon. It was a huge city, massive city, bigger than New York, and populated, and they were the superpower of their time. And there was a city neighboring that city, Babylon. So Ibrahim alayhi salam was born there. He was born in, and everybody around him was drowned in kufr and shirk. He had no Muslims around him. Everybody was doing kufr and shirk, and was being promoted. Even the king of that time, he would enforce it. He was born to Azar, right? I'm just giving you some summaries of his life, who was a religious minister of the country, and he was also in the business of selling idols. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he, as a young person, when he realized Tawheed, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided him, he told people about Islam, started doing da'wah. As a result, he went to jail 7 years. That was the first step that they took. They barred him away. Then, on an Eid festival, you all know the story, right? Azar, his father, and people, they go out for festivities of the idols, and then they left their idols behind. And they had left some offerings there, and they had gone, and we know what happened next, right? Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "I'm sick, inni saqim." He was sick of their shirk, sick spiritually. And then he destroyed the idols, right? And then he left the axe of the bigger one. And then when they came back, and then he gave them, he said, just ask the bigger god as to what happened to the smaller gods. And the people, when they had gone to their festivities, they come back, their habit was you always go to the gods first. And they used to have meals there. That's why they used to leave the foods there for the gods, but then they would come eat the food in front of the gods. So they had come back to eat the food in front of the gods, but probably lost their appetite once he saw all the gods were destroyed except the bigger one. And so we know what happened after that. Then all the community decided we're going to burn Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? And they catapulted him, right? Na'uzubillah, they took off his clothing and they put him into a bag and then they catapulted him into the fire. Then what happened next? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the fire, Kuni bardan wa salam, become cold and peaceful, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of all means. He puts effects into every means, and fire is a means to burn. He told everything is under the command of Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded it to become cool. It became cool. They saw this whole miracle that Ibrahim came out. They still didn't believe. Right? So when people are, when humans become ungrateful, hard-headed, there's no limits. He finally did hijrah, right? He was done with his community. He did hijrah, and when he was doing hijrah, there was only 3 people. There's only 3 people. It was Hazrat Sarah alayhi salam and Lut alayhi salam and him. 3 people. So, and it's a Nabi of Allah. But he went through all those sacrifices, but he's the father of Anbiya, father of prophets. So we learn from Ibrahim alayhi salam many things. Sacrifice. Despite being the role model, that even Deen Islam, we're told we are the Millah of Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? We are such a high connection to him. But how many followers did he have? 3, right? But when he's doing hijrah, he's only with 3. That also tells you don't get impressed by numbers. Do you get it? He's only going with 3 followers. Who are with him, who are on his path. Also in this verse here, so let's read the verse. So the verse is, and remember, okay, Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he said to his father and his people, because he had to imagine how much he had to stand up for the truth, that he had to go against his whole nation and against his parents. He said, "Innani bara'un mimma ta'budun," that I'm absolved of what you worship. I'm absolved of what you worship. So we learn from this statement of his, that when you have faith, proper faith, you have to absolve yourself of false faith. This is very important. Does it make sense? So you can't just say, okay, I believe also, but you denounce all the falsehood. You get it? To be a proper Muslim, you have to denounce that. And we learn that from this verse, that he said, I'm absolved from what you worship. So, for example, let's just say there's a Christian coming into Islam. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I believe in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. Yeah, I'm cool with all that. Is that going to be acceptable? We're going to say, no. We know that, okay, you like Islam and you accept our deen, but you denounce the worship of Isa alayhi salam. So from the Christian, we're going to take that from him, right? Similarly, like, let's say a Qadiani comes, worst form of kufr, right? Which reminds me, when we did the program conference for speaking about Khatmun Nubuwah, They came and they recited, they read وَلَكَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ وَخَاتَمَ النَّبِيِّينَ. Right? They read the verses. What were they trying to say? Right? They read the verses. That's not going to be sufficient for a Qadiani to come into Islam. Is that going to be sufficient for them to just read وَلَكَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ وَخَاتَمَ النَّبِيِّينَ? That's not going to be sufficient. He's going to have to absolve himself from the kufr. How's he going to absolve himself? He's going to say that Mirza Ghulam Qadiani was somebody cursed. He was in deep kufr. He's going to have to say that. Then they said it. So for the Christian to come into Islam, he has to disassociate with the worship of Jesus, and they have to. So the Qadianis have to also disassociate with the kufr of the false prophet. So this is very, very important. That this is part of our iman, denouncing. So there's this mentality which is known as sulh kul. Sometimes people try to act, part of liberalism. People try to act like, yeah, I'm okay with everyone. I don't say anything about, I'm just okay with, I'm sulh kul. I'm agreeing with everyone. You're not supposed to be like that. Understand? It's part of faith that you denounce what's wrong. Doesn't mean that you don't have to be tolerant. Of course, you're tolerant. You still, but you have to denounce you can't be sulh kul. Agree. Like, I'll give you a story. There was a person. He tried to create a movement where he tried to collect all the religions together. So he used to start off his program, I forget his name, but somebody in history, that he tried to just collect all so what he used to do, he used to do programs, say, I have a new alternative to religion. He used to read the Quran. His program used to begin by reading Quran. Then he would have somebody read from the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Hindu scriptures. He'd read all of them. He said, I'm okay with. He's like, I'm just okay with everything. Is that going to work? Is that faith? It's not going to work like that. You have to absolve yourself, and you have to have proper faith. Also, let's say you agree to something, but you don't believe in it. Is that going to work? A lot of people know that Islam is the truth. They'll come up to you and say, yeah, if I had to bet on a deen, it'll be what? It'll be Islam. But we ask them, do you believe in it? They said, you have to believe in it. So you have to see it as a truth and then also believe in it. The example of that would be like Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl neither confirmed it to be true, and he didn't believe in it. But what about Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ? Did he see it as truth? I mean, he must have seen some truth in it because he defended his right, Prophet ﷺ. Right, he was supporting Prophet ﷺ, Abu Talib, but did he believe in it? He didn't believe in it, so that's not going to work. Let's just say somebody can talk praise Islam, but you have to say, do you believe in every aspect of it? You have to have full yaqeen in it, and cannot have any other beliefs. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us that tawfiq. May Allah subhanahu given us this gift of iman. May Allah subhanahu give us tawfiq to preserve it, mainstream Islam, and also denounce all types of shirk, innovations, adding to religion and subtracting religion. Denounce all this. We should be like Ibrahim alayhi salam. He denounced them. We should denounce this as well. Then after that, إِلَّا الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي, the next verse, except the one who created me. So he's saying, I'm denouncing all these other gods, except the one who created me, فَطَرَنِي, who created my nature, who created my fitra, who created me. فَإِنَّهُ سَيَهْدِينِ, he'll guide me. And then after that, the next verse, وَجَعَلَهَا كَلِمَةً بَاقِيَةً فِي عَقِبِهِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. And he made it a word lasting among his progeny, so that they may return. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he left a legacy. The next verse is, he left a legacy. Not that he followed Islam so perfectly, always surrendering, submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? The other thing he did is that he made sure his children were on the right track. That's the next part. So if me and you are going to follow the path of Ibrahim alayhi salam, you're going to have to be hanif, steadfast upon that straight path, no wavering, with yaqeen. And also you're going to ensure that about your children. That's what it's saying. That, and of course it's praise. It also uses the word ja'ala. Wherever ja'ala is used, is for gifts. And he made it, that he made sure that this deen continued through his children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. So Ibrahim alayhi salam left a legacy. What legacy are me and you going to leave? Yeah, shorting. What legacy? So obviously our children are going to play a big role in our legacy. Right? So we make sure that we do leave a legacy. We teach them. Understand? And an example you can take is that if you look at the first juz at the end, Ibrahim alayhi salam and Yaqub alayhi salam, it says at the end of first juz, they both advise their children on their deathbeds about the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right? It says at the end of the first juz, it says, وَوَصَّى بِهَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ بَنِيهِ وَيَعْقُوبُ. That Ibrahim alayhi salam and Yaqub alayhi salam advised his children. They give wassa, they give wasiyah. Ya baniya, oh my children. You know who Yaqub alayhi salam is, right? Ishaq and Yaqub. Ibrahim alayhi salam's son is Ishaq, Ishaq alayhi salam's son is Yaqub. They both did that. They advised their children. Ya baniya, oh my beautiful children. Inna Allah istafa lakum ad-deen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose for you the deen. Right? He gave you the deen. You're blessed with the deen. فَلَا تَمُوتُونَ. Don't die illa wa antum muslimun, except that you are in the state of submission. So they're there. So the legacy, this is legacy. That the deathbed advising, who are you going to worship after me? Making sure, because he knows that they're surrounded by shit. Make sure you don't fall into it. But guys, brothers, let's bring that home. How do we bring that home? So what are me and you going to do? Well, I'll share something that some alim did, that maybe we can take inspiration from it. There's a scholar in Pakistan. His name was Sheikh Ghulam Habibullah, rahmatullah alayhi. He left many masajid and many madaris in Pakistan, in the Chakwal area. He founded a lot of mosques, masajid, and a lot of schools. Then he wrote in the will, and then he knew that his family was going to run it after him, that these masajid were there. He put in there that okay, fine, my children can control it, that they're going to continue doing the work of being, that this is a masjid and they're going to maintain it. But as long as they're on the belief system of the scholars of Deoband. And if they deviate from that, then they don't have authority here. Please switch them. So why did he put that in there? Because that's important. So he had identified that the scholars of Deoband were the truth, that the belief system and the understanding was accurate. So he placed that in there. That makes sense. So just to give you an idea of what you could do, is that you learn the deen and then you advise your children to be on a path. Understand that you've seen, and then you make sure that they're on that. Because our situation is a little different than Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? Our situation is a little different. Our challenges are a bit different. So you would advise them accordingly. Then the next verse. بل متعت هؤلاء. Rather, I gave them the material enjoyments, these and their forefathers. Now it's coming to the mushrikeen in Makkah. First telling about the people who. Now this verse is particularly about the mushrikeen in Makkah. That these people, matta'tu, I gave them enjoyment. Meaning that, oh mushrikeen in Makkah, we've given you luxuries of life. You're living a normal life, you're living a decent life. You and your forefathers. Hatta ja'ahum al-haq. The truth has come to you, wa rasulun mubin, and a messenger who explains it well. And a clarifying messenger. We have Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He explains everything. وَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمُ الْحَقِّ. And then when the truth comes to them, قَالُوا, they say, هَذَا سِحْرٌ, this is magic, وَإِنَّا بِهِ كَافِرٌ, and verily, we disbelieve in it. So the mushrikeen in Makkah, they used to actually listen to the Quran because it was revealed in very eloquent Arabic, and actually amongst them, they actually were very good at Arabic themselves. It was one of their major talents. Didn't have any, that was their specialty. They used to memorize poems. And they would listen to the Quran because it was mesmerizing for them. It was very effective. It used to affect them. And there's stories about Abu Jahl in the Seerah, you read, that Abu Jahl used to listen to Quran. He would listen to Quran. The Prophet ﷺ reading Quran. Could you imagine that? Like sometimes, we aspire to listen to that Qari or that person who recites it accurately. So imagine even the Muslims and the non-Muslims, they had an opportunity to hear. So there's a story about Abu Jahl listening to Quran and another man named Akhnas. They didn't accept Islam. They both died in the Battle of Badr. But there's a story about that Abu Jahl, he used to go listen to the Quran. And that was like part of his activities. He would secretly go listen to the Quran. And Akhnas used to do the same. And then they would meet each other. And one time, but they didn't tell anyone that they used to listen to the Quran. So they crashed into one, they ended up meeting each other a couple of times. And they asked each other, where do you go at this time? Because they both coming around the block. they got to a place to listen to Quran. Where are you going? He said, oh, I'm just going about this business. And Akhras was there, just going about that business. I said, okay, let's let it go. Let's carry on. And the next day find each other. Next day find each other. Finally, they both realized that I think they both are going for the same activity, was to listen to Quran. So Akhras once asked Abu Jahl that, you make up all these stories about Prophet ﷺ is a magician, right? You guys come up with all these themes and plans and plots against him. Do you think that what we're saying, that he's a magician, you think that's true? Or do you think that the Quran is true? Like, tell me the truth. Put all the glamour aside and what we're saying to the public. So Abu Jahl, he answered to Akhnas. See, we have this in history. Abu Jahl answered to Akhnas that, this is the truth. He said that the Quran is the truth. He said, but the problem is that we will have to let go of our leadership. It's it's a political downfall for us. So therefore we cannot. It means that we lose everything. Because basically what he boiled it down to, what used to happen before Rasulullah ﷺ is that these Jahili Arabs, they had political parties. So Abu Jahl was part of a party and there was another party, like Democrat, Republican. They had their parties and they would keep going at it at each other. Sometimes they have the leadership, sometimes the other political party has the leadership. So ever since Rasulullah ﷺ came, it was, if you accepted him, both political parties were going to fall. It was going to be just Rasul, because Rasulullah ﷺ is not a political party. He came with he came with turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So their wrong way of, their version of political parties was all going to fall if they submitted to Rasulullah ﷺ. So it was an issue of the money and who's going to have the finances and who's going to control the whole city. And he's like, we just can't let go of it. Believing, and we know that this is the truth. If we accept Rasulullah ﷺ, then who's us? There's no us. So that was the reason. And so they would make up these things as هذا السحر, this is magic, وَالنَّبِي كَافِرٌ. Then the next verse, وَقَالُوا, and they would say, the mushrikeen of Makkah, لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ, that if this Quran was revealed على رجل, upon a man, من القريتين عظيم, from the two big cities, from Makkah and Taif. Meaning they were trying to object that why wasn't the Quran given to an influential person? Prophet ﷺ was a yatim, an orphan. He wasn't somebody, he didn't even have a home, didn't have his own property to his name, right? So, but on the other hand, you had all these big politicians. So they're wondering that why is it, the two big cities of Makkah and Taif, it could have been any great man from these two cities who could have had this position. How come this orphan has to have it? Okay, so this is that verse. Now here we'll come back to that. Remember I said we're going to speak about the professionals. So just two notes on the professionals. One is that whenever a Nabi comes into the world, the group who stands up to them are the professionals. They can't stand it because it's a money thing. They can't stand the revelation. And the second is that they wonder why didn't they become entitled? Meaning the people who are the professionals, why don't they become the ones for nubuwwah? Why don't they have prophethood? Why is prophethood not given to them? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers it in the next verses. They held their affluent people that a person who has, according to them, that a person who has outward material, he's the biggest person. Who has this dunyavi means, he's the biggest person. But what's to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who's the big person? To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the big person is a person who has good akhlaq. Who has a good, he chooses the person who has great vessel, somebody who can take on the of nubuwwah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not looking to see who has a great art in the world. He's looking to see who has good akhlaq. And that's why he chooses prophethood. So this was a misunderstanding of the mushrikeen Arab. So just to put one more note, we had people who see wahi, revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is different, and then being a professional in the world is different. If you're a professional in the world, does it mean that you automatically know the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or is it a whole different thing? It's a whole different learning that you have to do. So, and we find history always repeats itself. So the Nabis, they were always confronted by the affluent. The affluent people means people who eat well, who are well-to-do. They're the first people who accept a prophet. The people who are not well off, who are not professionals, they easily accept the Nabi of their time? Who are the people who are going to stand up against it? The affluent people. So, and then does it always have to be like that? No. Sometimes affluent people accept Islam and then they help with the progress of Islam greatly. So it just depends who Allah SWT gives hidayah. So one lesson to be learned here is that you have to always be humble. Always be humble. If you have other skills, does that mean you have the skill of Quran? That means that you have the knowledge of the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't mean that. It's good to have both. Understand? It's good to have knowledge of something of the world, but also knowledge of revelation. Right? That's what we want for our children, right? That they grow up knowing the Quran, knowing the understandings of the Quran. It's different. I'll give you another little story on that. One of my teachers, and his students, they're professionals. His students are professionals. So he has people, I mean, I'm not saying you guys are not, mashallah, you guys are great professionals. Everybody's a professional in their own way. But his students, so one of the things he would do to them, just as a training for them, his students would be like dentists, architects, and they all come to study the deen. One of the things that he would do to them, part of their training, is that he would pick on them on religious matters. Like, oh, that's wrong. Yeah, that's wrong what you're doing there. That's how you do it. No, that's not how you do it. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. So now these students, 2 years, all they heard was that they were wrong. So because once they came into the class, like an architect, like a dentist, they thought they're so great. So the teacher took that out of them, that when it comes to revelation, you're not great. Yes, you may be a great dentist, but doesn't mean you're a great Muslim, or you know even the alif bata of revelation. So we gotta bring you down to zero. Once you're humbled to know that you're zero, we can start learning. You see the process? That was important. And then once all those students understood that with revelation we're zero, it's a whole different learning. You may be a professional in, like you may be a mechanic, right? You may be any art you may have, but that does not mean, it doesn't entitle you to automatically be somebody who knows revelation. Does you see the issue? This itself is a major thing, even in our communities today. Major obstacle of the Islamic communities growing is because the professional, sometimes, not every, again, sometimes we have people, Allah SWT blesses, Allah SWT gives hidayah to many professionals, like yourselves, mashallah, who have, alhamdulillah, the knowledge of Quran. At the same time, you're a professional. But that's like a major obstacle. They have to become humble. And and that's one of the things that we, one of the things that helps is, when children are studying Quran from a young age, like they're in the maktab system, is that it teaches them the revelation and they're growing up with other knowledges, and then there's no clash between the two. Make sense? People who usually, their childhood, they never studied the Quran, they never were infused with the revelationary knowledge, and then they grow up, then now they become, because see what gifts do choose, they make you arrogant. So since they are professionals, they have a great art, gives them that arrogance. Now through the revelation of Allah, they can't be humbled. And then they have the false, shaitan gives them the false understanding that we know it. So there's nothing I need to learn. What do you want to teach me? But they don't understand that they don't even understand the alif bata of the Quran. So this is why I had placed that in there, that misguidance. Now, another thing, growing up, we never think that, because the society always praises the professionals, right? We never thought that there could be something wrong with them. But they're humans. They're what? They're human. Just because you're a professional doesn't mean that you automatically have the knowledge of Islam and Iman and Ihsan, that you've already reached those levels. You cannot. That's a whole different learning. So that's a major thing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide them. You have to learn. You have to learn from the ulama. I was listening to a clip today by Maulana Hakim Akhtar. I was talking to you about Maulana Hakim Akhtar. You know Maulana Hakim Akhtar. Just a small clip. It just happened to be. And it's kind of related to what I'm talking about. He said that Maulana Maulana Hakim Akhtar said that he found in the books of Maulana Rumi, rahmatullahi alayh, that the example of the Muslim community who doesn't want to benefit from the ulama is like an example of a bat. They give the example of a bat, Maulana Rumi. He said a bat, he likes to stay in darkness upside down. Okay? And I'm not sure, I don't know who knows bats around here, but I've heard that they eat and they do the other thing from the same place. I think they relieve themselves from the same place. You guys can look that up. I don't know about that about bats. I heard one. You guys can do your own research of what bats do, but you all know that they hang upside down, right? In darkness or in light? Where do they like it? In darkness. He said that is an example of the Muslim community who stays away from ulama. They love to be upside down hanging somewhere. And then that example of that there's filth that comes from their mouth is they backbiting about ulama all the time. Because of course, when that community who doesn't like ulama, and they're talking, haven't you noticed they talk foul all the time about who? Only one group. They don't like the ulama. Look at that example. Wow, that's an amazing example of Maulana Rumi. May Allah reward him. So like growing up, I mean, the society always praised. I mean, I think like about people have stopped now, but I think like 8-10 years ago, people used to say things about ulama, like Maulana, this. That's kind of stopped now. But professionals, I think growing up, I've always heard good things about professionals, like, oh, he's a professional. Like, it's like so idealistic. That's like they're doodh ki dhule mein. You heard that term before? As they're so holy, doodh ki dhule mein. But we never realized that you could actually be a very misguiding person. That you're not only misguided yourself, but you're going to misguide others. Just because you're arrogant, because you know something. But you don't realize that you know that, but you don't know this. This is a root problem. So sorry I went on this long tangent, but hopefully you understand here now. And subhanAllah, the Quran points it out. The Quran points it out. It points out that when the Nabi came, the affluent people stand up to him. That was a hint right there. The people who are well-to-do stick up to him. People who are not well-to-do, they don't say anything except the Nabi. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us both from the dunya and the akhirah, and our people who may be a victim of this, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for them. Then moving on, the next verse, and this is the last verse. Ahum yaqsimuna rahmat rabbik. Are they going to divide the mercy of your Lord? Are they going to divide the mercy of your Lord? It's talking about the Mushrikeen Arab. The Mushrikeen Arab were proposing that why did the Prophet ﷺ become Nabi here? The Nabi should have been any political leader, somebody who's great, well-to-do, he should have become it. Why did it have to be an orphan? So Allah is saying, are you going to divide the mercy of your Lord? This is my rahmah. I choose my Nabi. I could have made anybody my Nabi. Are you going to now decide who's going to be the Nabi? So are you going to decide? And by the way, in the world, what's the highest station? What's the highest human rank that a person could achieve? Is nubuwah, right? Nubuwah is the highest maqam. So are the Mushrikeen Arab thinking that, right? Are these people thinking that Allah was going to ask them for their advice as to the highest station, who's going to get it? So then the next verse says, نَحْنُ قَسَمْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ مَعِيشَتَهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. We divide between them the livelihood in the life of this world. وَرَفَعْنَا بَعْدَهُمْ فَوْقَ بَعْدٍ دَرَجَاتٍ. And we raise some above some in levels. It's saying that Mushrikeen Arab, you guys are thinking that in Nubuwah we're going to check with you who do you think should be a prophet. We don't even check with you in the world, meaning in worldly matters, meaning who's going to be rich, who's going to be from which family. Do we decide that? Is there equality or everybody's different? Everybody's different, right? You're from different family, you have different talents. Allah is saying that Nubuwah is such a high level. We're definitely not going to ask you on that. We haven't even asked you about your economical structures. Who's going to have so much money? Who's going to be from which family? How prosperous you are? These things are all decided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He's kept it's not all equal. He's raised some above some. Now, why has He raised some above some? It says here, لِيَتَّخِذَ بَعْضُهُمْ بَعْضًا سُخْرِيًّا, so that some could go take labor from some. So that the labor force could work, right? Some people could hire some, because some people have money, some people have the know-how how to do the work. And in the surah that we read prior, it said لَبَغَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ, that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given wealth to people, more wealth than what they can bear, they would rebel. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made everybody a millionaire, they wouldn't have to go to work, right? That should be enough, right? Then you can just not go to work. So it says that the whole world would just stop. So it's true. In the previous surah, it said, لَبَغَوْا, you would rebel in the earth. And here it says, so that you could take labor. I just want to elaborate a little bit on that. In the modern world, there's a thing about equality. People try to raise the flag of equality. Because in societies, in the Western societies, they wanted to divorce themselves. These societies are actually based that they wanted to get away from deen. And when they wanted to get away from deen, they created liberalism. So right now we're living in a society known as liberalism. And then that produced other things. From amongst other things that liberalism produced, is it produced, it chants the slogan of equality and freedom. That in itself is not natural. It's not even based on logic. And it's not something that the whole world agrees on. Okay? But they constantly chant equality. Equality, what equality? Equality, it doesn't make any sense. Every human being is different. What equality? Equality between what? Man, woman, man's role is different, woman's role is different. So what equality are we talking about? People are all different. Our income brackets are different. Our talents are different. So what equality? So this is a slogan of these secular societies of equality, which is inappropriate, wrong from the Islamic perspective. Our perspective is rights, fulfill people's rights, human rights. They should be observed and fulfilled. And the slogan of equality, we think that's empty. There's no equality. How are you going to have equality? What equality? That's something that liberalism is trying to achieve. Yeah. It's a misnomer. So really the flag should go up is of rights, of hukuk. And the liberalism, do they have hukuk of women's right? Mother's rights in there? Somewhere in the hukuk of liberalism, do they have mother's rights? There's no mother's rights in there, right? They're just missing that part. That's the important right, mother's right and father's right. It's not in there. So these teachings of liberalism, they're not enlightened as we think that they are, right? So we are made to believe in them, become part of liberalism. Like it's like forced upon us, liberalism, but they're not enlightening at all. They're actually destructive. Also since these verses are talking about economics, right? It's saying we have divided between your livelihoods. And we talked about this in previous surahs as well. What does that mean? How the labor force is divided. The countries around us, the two popular economical structures, capitalism and socialism. And we talked about this in the previous dars as well. Socialism is more based on it's more based on the labor of a person. In socialism, you value the labor. And in capitalism, the only thing you value is the money, the dollar bill at the end. You just make money at all costs. Both socialism died out, like it had a bad fall. Capitalism also, our scholars think, is also not gonna work because there's something wrong with it, something unnatural in it. Okay. What you need to have is you can take some ingredients of socialism and some of capitalism, and you need to take in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. How are you going to factor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out? The rules Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for human beings, you have to factor those in. Then you can have an economical structure that's gonna continue, that's gonna be lasting, that's not gonna have a great fall. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make that easy. Like for example, we see a lot of, there's no, in wealth, what's the wealth gap in the US between the billionaires and what's the wealth gap? Huge wealth gap, right? Huge. And how's the middle class doing? No comments. Like, how's the middle class doing, right? This is because what happened is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rules are that with money, you can't do haram with that money, right? You can't profit off of creating things that are harm to human beings. So you can only make profit off of only certain things. That's not being followed. You can't make money off of money. You can't do interest. So if you took all those haram elements away and then allowed people, and then after that, Islam says, look at this rule, that whoever you pay, the people you pay, they should have enough money to live a decent life, right? So what's happening in our economical structure, right? You have like billionaires, just to give an example, like you get Uber company, right, from a billionaire. And how much do they pay? Do they pay such a nice wage that they live a nice, decent life? No, absolutely not. So that wouldn't be allowed. You cannot pay someone who's going to work really hard and not. So you get all the anxiety that people get from this type of an economy. You get Amazon. Is Amazon pay so great? So these are things that wouldn't be allowed in an Islamic, in an economical structure. So you have to curb these, and then you have to take care of the labor. They both are important, labor and the money. And then you would have that system that doesn't have the great fall. And then you come across justice and people's rights are fulfilled. Doesn't have to be, but so that empty slogan of equality, of liberalism, it's It's not as it seems. Okay, so after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points out that, O Mushrikeen Arab, just going through this verse one more time, that do you want to divide the mercy of your Lord? And that part is talking about Nubuwa. The Mushrikeen Arab, are we going to check with you who should be a prophet? That's that. Then it's saying, forget, that's too far that we're going to check with you who's going to be prophet. We don't even check with you who's going to have how much money. Like who's going to have what kind of income brackets. We don't even check that with you. And then the last part of this verse, وَرَحْمَةُ رَبِّكَ, and the mercy of your Lord, خَيْرٌ مِمَّا يَجْمَعُونَ. And this revelation, these teachings and connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the knowledge of Nubuwwah is better than all that you amass. So all the material that a human being could gather, the mercy of your Lord is better than all that you amass. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the to amal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anything that correct that we said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us to amal, anything wrong, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi subhanallah al-azim. Okay, does anyone have a question? I can take it. Yes.
So you said, you know how you can't profit off of something that harms others? You said just now. So for instance, if you have a tobacco store, would that be something in that category?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, that wouldn't be your ideal job. Yeah, it would not be.
So that would.
I've had a friend who created a, what's the alternative to tobacco store? Was it the Viper? What is it?
Vape.
The vape. Somebody, one of my Muslim friends, he started a vape shop. I was like, why you start the vape shop? He's like, I'm just trying to save people to go from tobacco to get, go to vape next. What's worse? Really?
It's more addictive.
Oh, it's more addictive.
Yeah, compared to cigarette.
Oh, yeah? So why did he think that? Do some people think that? Vape is more better than tobacco?
No, it's just the concept of
it's more
smell.
It's less harmful, maybe? No.
It's not less harmful. It's just they're trying to do the new
sophistication.
Yeah. Just trying to bring in the new, you know how it is, innovate.
So no, we're not going to participate in that.
Even a
that's
vape
not
shop, right?
You get it? So
There's
Islam.
no difference between a tobacco shop and a
Oh,
vape
I didn't know that.
It's more nicotine, actually. You're getting more nicotine, more condensed.
Oh. Yeah, so no, that's the thing. That's the challenge. So it needs to be good products, beneficial for a thing. You shouldn't resort to these types of works. Even if you're making lots of money. If somebody says, I'll make a lot of money with my tobacco shop, but you probably will. But these wrong businesses, drugs, smuggling, despite how much money you can make off of it, you're just not allowed. You have to make it from something that ethically, Islamically, Shar'an is jaiz, something that's permissible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make that easy for us in such an economy for people to buy and sell things that are very wholesome.
I think you touched upon a very good point about people who know about Islam, the non-Muslims. They know that it's haq. I think one point is like the level, the status, the society, and they don't believe in akhir. They don't believe that after you die, there's a new life which is going to start. I think that's the point which they don't understand. And that is why the iman doesn't go inside. I was just thinking about it.
Right. People do come and get into this zone that they're not going to look, think. They're not going to go outside there. They're very comfortable with what Allah has given them, and that's it. And they're not going to become guided, and they're not going to take these steps.
And also, I've heard about from an alim that there was a few classmates with him in alim class, and he went not alim, maybe father, and then he went to South Africa. And they come back. They're all professionals, and left deen. So that is another
dimension. Yeah, that could happen. But there might be a big fault somewhere.
Yeah,
must be doing something wrong that somebody went astray like that. Yeah, they could be. I gave an example of my Jummah speech. I gave the example that these are means of hidayah. Quran is a means of guidance. Masjid is a means of guidance. Teacher is a means of guidance. Doesn't mean that you're going to become guided. We have examples in our community of people who hung around with big scholars, and today they're misguided. And sometimes when you hang around with them, they'll boast about it. They'll say, oh, that big alim, yeah, he was my basement man. The other alim, yeah, I took him shopping at Target man. So you're boasting. You were so close to big alim. What did you learn? Did you ever change? Nope. His life is in shambles. Nobody wants to have that kind of a life. So how does that happen? That means hidayah nahi hai, no? Hidayah is in the hands of Allah. You have to be humble. There must be something wrong that they're doing. A technical, yeah.
So what's the missing ingredient?
Where?
What happened there?
Yeah, so how do you go through the actions and make sure you're guided?
You have to make dua. You have to make dua that Allah subhanahu doesn't allow you to slip from the path. And then you have to keep practicing. Religion, even in the dictionary, in the English dictionary, religion means something that you do constantly. You pray, you renew your faith, you remind yourself, right? That's why you stay in these types of classes, always remind till the end.
And also the surroundings.
All the mahul, yeah, you create good environment, you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you reflect upon His Quran, you constantly reflect and read and remind and remind and remind. And you do that remembrance of Allah, you do zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you keep up with all these things. So anybody who cuts off himself from the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, bad thinking about ulama and friends, and sometimes it's small little things that get in your way that are obstacles, but you have to think and you have to come back. And some poisons are more poisonous than others. Like bid'ah is a very big poison. When a person does bid'ah, it's very addictive. It's when you do bid'ah, then you can't adhere to the sunnah.
What's bid'ah?
Innovation. Lots of people in that. So you have to, again, hidayah is in the hands of Allah. These are all means. I mean, Abu Jahl, didn't he live like next door to the Prophet? Who was it who lived next door and wasn't guided? So Abu Jahl, right? He was a neighbor to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But did he get hidayah? He had the best teacher. He had directly Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no like, he was neighbor. He would hear when they got up. Isn't that Abu Jahl? Come on, guys. Isn't that Abu Jahl? Right? Neighbor to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So do you know that Rasulullah married his daughter to the sons of Abu Jahl? Did you know that? He married his daughter to the sons of Abu Jahl. But did Abu Jahl accept Islam? What went wrong there?
Arrogance.
Yeah, arrogance. There's certain diseases that you have to overcome. So you could do a slip. That's why as Muslims, we never feel secure. We never think like, "Bas, I'm Jannati." No, we keep trying, right? We keep praying to Allah. We cleanse it ourselves. And that process continues till death. You constantly try to be on the straight path. What's more guidance? Maybe you're not guided. Maybe you have a wrong. Sometimes, in society, there's misinformation in society. Sometimes you may learn something wrong. You heard the wrong speech. You read the wrong book. You're misguided about a sunnah. Just one sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And maybe 5 years down the line, somebody will enlighten you that was wrong what you've been doing 5 years. Like that. So, but as long as we try, we keep our eyes open, keep our brain open, that we want guidance, we want to learn, and keep making these efforts, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will keep helping us. And these are means that we have placed. And then we still rely on the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah accepts us, He keeps us on the straight path. That's why we make du'as like that, keep us on the straight path. Let us die on the death of La ilaha illallah. So
letting go, I mean, that's one of the that's too, like, this is the reason that you were giving an example. It's arrogance and not being humble. Because you always say too, like you have to be humble, because you may be hanging around with aliens, but then the ilm also can be means of arrogance. Because you have too much ilm, now you became arrogant and you're not humble to come.
It's always arrogant. Arrogance is a root disease of all the diseases. It's definitely arrogance. And everybody deals with it at their own levels. Some people are dealing with it, they're not even in Islam yet, right? There's some level of arrogance that's stopping them. And so it could be somebody who's a Muslim, but he's not progressing. And then he's not progressing. He's not getting any more closer. That is because of his arrogance. Are you gonna say something? Huh?
You have to be humble.
Yeah, you have to overcome it. So Allah, as a Muslim, you're gonna be tested. Allah will put situations before you. You're gonna have to be humble for your upgrade. Keep being more humble for your upgrade. So there's no stopping. You continue and you work on an ilm and working on your heart, with the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are continual process. You're going, and there's no end point. Like, oh, I reached it, I'm humble now.
Actually, like the example will be like, even in our homes, inside our homes, like, traditionally man is the head of the home. And then like when something, there is an opportunity where wife says like, something very recent. And even your son may have read something and he is trying to correct you,
Hmm.
you should be having that humbleness to accept that.
Accept
you know?
it, yes,
I
absolutely.
think that's a test we have to.
Yeah, Prophet ﷺ exactly said that was the definition of arrogance. That when truth is presented, you reject it. That was the definition of arrogance. Someone asked him that I have new shoes, I have new clothing. Am I arrogant? Prophet ﷺ said, no, that's not the definition of arrogance. Definition of arrogance is when truth comes to you, you don't accept it.
Speaking of humbleness, when you it's not just deen. So, example for the kids, when you go to school, when there's a new teacher, you have a new class. If you're not humble, I mean, the reason you're sitting there because you're humble. You're thinking that I don't know anything. This person is teaching me this book. You start with chapter 1. You don't say on day 1, your teacher say he's not like teaching me. He's not sitting this way. He's not speaking this way. You're actually being humble in a way you're not realizing. But when it comes to deen, it's a different, level.
But people judge differently.
Yeah, just differently. Alim Salah se nahi padha rahe the, namaz nahi padha rahe.
Oh, but you're saying the same people accept that at university?
Yeah, I'm giving the example. Like I told one of my parents, like when you go to school, do you say that first day or second day that my teacher is doing that, and I'm not gonna just study for it, You're humble. That was the reason you were sitting there in class.
It's the same thing. If we applied all what parents do and the tools we use, because in our human nature, the material is very close to dunya, is very close to us. So how hard we work at dunya, if we just put the same amount for akhirah, you and your family will be just fine. But that's the issue. You won't do it. Like I had a friend the other time, I had a gentleman. His children are not that religious. They've grown up now, elderly gentleman. But he came up to me. He's like, Omar, when my children came home from school, I said, no TV, straight to homework. I was like, okay, all right, that's a great means of dunya. I'm sure they're nice engineers and they're going to get it. But he never told me anywhere that, Omar, I told him Quran. He was just trying to tell me that when they came home from school, I said, no TV, straight to homework. I said, okay, that'll make them a fascinating professional. But tell me something about how much, how many years. And the Islamic learning is not like 4 years. You learn from the cradle to the grave Islamic learning. Other arts, you can study them just until you know it, or how much you need for the material world. Since the akhirah is forever, the learning about akhirah is forever. Forever meaning in the life. We continuously learn from the cradle to the grave, the religious knowledge. Because you have to keep that knowledge fresh. And it's like a zikr, it's like a reminder. And then you always improve. And the Quran is everlasting spring. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us to be on the straight path.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
You have to go?
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I have a question, probably may not be related to your tafsir session today, but the du'as that you do in, before the taslim, after the atahiyat and durud, example, the famous dua, Rabbi ja'alni muqima salati wa min zurriyati, that is in a singular form. And can we say that in a plural form? Rabbana ja'alna muqimina salatina wa min zurriyatina kulluhum ajma'ina bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Is it allowed?
It's fine, yes. It's allowed. It's allowed. But also the words that the Quran gave us the du'as in and the hadith gave it, they have their own power. So you do both of them. I personally do both of them. Sometimes I take
Both
those
of
du'as,
them.
change the tenses of it. Sometimes I just leave it exactly the way it is.
Yeah.
It's the exact
So
language.
I do both of them. I do first the Quranic dua, then after that I do this one that I just told you. So it is okay to do both of them.
It's okay to do both of them.
Yeah, because lot of du'as are in plural. Rabbana Atina is plural. Surah Fatiha is in plural.
Yes.
So
you're allowed to do that. That's fine.
Okay. Jazakallahu khairan.
Oh yeah, jazakallah. Okay. Let's do